Hello again. Um, uh, all right. So this one, this current video is another. I think I called it "Figuring Out My Fears." It's been a little bit, and I'm doing this way towards the tail end of the month, whereas typically I would do it during the middle. That was due to extenuating factors, mostly just being sick, and also not having the notebook where I wrote everything for one of the middle weeks. So, yeah, kind of stopped myself from being able to do it. Um, but I'm back, and and the one that I'm actually going to be talking about, I've thought about a lot since I wrote it down, and my ideas on it might be a bit different from what I've written down, so might not be coming directly out of my thought process at the time of writing. Might be a tad bit different. Um, and since it has been a little bit, the memories of the original video are a tad hazy. I still remember the general idea of it, especially since I have the paper like right here. I just have to turn the page and well, there it is, and I get the idea of where I was going with it. One thing that I actually kind of beat myself up over because I did want to do this was going to be a sort of sequel or follow up that was connected to uh, the video about loss. And well, that is this is directly connected to loss in a sense because the main fear is loss, and the only reason that I actually have any fear of this is because of loss. So fears causing fears, that type of thing. Or yeah, compounding. They compound on top of each other, and they grow bigger and bigger, and it just gets worse and worse and worse, and it sucks. Um, Enough beating around the bush, though. Um, this video is about attachment, a fear of attachment. This is something I noticed that I've had for a pretty long time, actually. Um, I don't, I can't pinpoint when exactly it happened, but I've had this for a while. I think probably it probably started around middle school, maybe. There's a there's a good chance I'm wrong on that. That's not the point of this video. It's to For the most part, the point is to answer the 5 questions and then add anything that I think is valuable. So, now that we're done with number 1, number 2, what effects? What effects have these fears had on me? I think I pretty succinctly put them down in the book or on the page in the book. Um, I become reclusive, very closed off. I don't wanna. I don't want to talk to people. Like reclusive in the sense that I actually try to isolate myself from everything. Not really just people. It's from literally everything. From even my dogs, my family. I try not to connect with anything, and it kind of sucks. I also become incredibly rude. You know, don't have to fear attachment if people don't like you, right? They'll just leave you alone. And of course, naturally, as is an effect of the other um, effects, I get incredibly lonely because, well, I don't, I don't, I don't, I don't make connections with people. I don't talk to people. I just kind of isolate myself, sit there, and just kind of stew, I guess, is the best way of putting it. Of course, from what I put down in the book, this only really applies to human connection or human attachment, but it doesn't just come from human attachment either. I think I did myself a little bit of a disservice by stopping right there, but I also have a fear of attachment to certain items, and I will say that manifests more as a habit for hoarding, which I have kind of gotten over, only kind of, not fully, but it's a sort of, I guess you can divide it up into two entirely separate things: an artificial attachment and a true attachment. Artificial stuff would be like, I don't know, I got this as a gift on Christmas, so I should keep it. It's really super surface level, and it probably doesn't even reflect how I'm feeling. If anything, it's quite contrary to how I'm feeling because I don't want to keep it, yet I do because, well, there's some artificial attachment there. And then there's the more emotional attachments for something like my computer, something I use all the time, stuff that I legitimately enjoy, like a couple of the collectible figures that I have that I actually received as gifts for Christmas. I actually have a form of emotional attachment to because I really like them. So if I lost those, I probably wouldn't feel too great. So there's there's a in in scenarios like that, there's a general want and need, and I'm going to put it as need because fear is close to debilitating enough for it to be a need, but there's a general want and need to have nothing, to essentially just empty my room out and have like a bed and then like anything that's necessary, and that's it. Which, when I think about it, seems really stupid, but it is there. It is certainly there. Because, well, if you have nothing, you can't get attached to it, and so you can't feel the effects of loss due to attachment. You don't. You can't be scared of attachment if there's nothing to get attached to, right? It's kind of that's kind of the whole thought process behind it. Um, Actually, I just got into question number three, or yeah, to number three without even fully going into it, simply so that I can elaborate on some of the thoughts that I already had and didn't elaborate on. But if you couldn't tell, number three is how do I handle it? And, well, the effects of it are actually rather self explanatory as to how I handle it. For people or animals, like, we're all animals. For other beings, is a better way of putting it. I just isolate myself. I don't interact. I I try to separate myself from the world around me and put myself in sort of like my own little dimension where nothing can bother me and it's just me. Which is not great, but the only reason I end up doing that is because of the fact that due to a fear of attachment and loss, I I convince myself that I'm better off entirely on my own. I don't need those attachments. I don't need those people. I don't need those things. I'm better off separate, entirely isolated in like solitary confinement in a prison. I'm better off that way than I would be if I just interacted with the world and experienced loss and just attachment. Oh, actually, maybe on the second one, there is another thing that I fear attachment for, which is a bit more of a deep dig into myself and family life. I can explain it here, though, because it can definitely be seen as a coping mechanism. Um, I'm for this. I only put the convincing myself to be alone, but there's a little more to the convincing than I think I fully give it credit for. Sometimes I talked about this a little bit with my friend, which is kind of how I discovered that this was a serious problem and how I may have way too much of a fear. But let's just say I didn't exactly have a great role models when it came to just relationships in general. Uh, when I don't even know how young. It was long before I went into elementary school. The earliest memory I have is of me staring at a TV, like point blank, kind of like my eyes are 2 inches away from the screen type beat. And then my mom and dad are having a screaming match right next to me. Like, I remember the exact I remember the exact like floor plan, the exact it is incredibly vivid. Like the only thing that seems different is every time I revisit it, I grow up cuz well that's who I am now. But it's an incredibly vivid little kind of nightmare because I'm not going to say it's super accurate to what actually happened, but yeah, it's a nightmare born from a reality that I experienced. And let's just say that spending more time with my mom and dad, especially when they ended up interacting more even after they got a divorce, didn't exactly give me a healthy view on how to interact with other people and how, you know, romantic relationships work, which is part of the reason why I've never been in one. I'm scared of what I'll do. I'm scared, and this fear also comes from a self awareness that I don't know what I'm doing and I know where I'm coming from. So I'm scared of what I'll do, sort of, I guess, instinctually based off of what I know and not what I what I believe is good. This self awareness mostly just comes from being taught by fucking movies and TV shows because yeah, that's something to get into another time. But they mostly come from stuff like that since that's the only place I ever actually learned things from. And even still, I definitely have a type of show I like, which didn't help in that department at all. So not only do I know nothing, but the things I do know are inherently abusive and very scary to me, let alone the people who would actually be engaging in a relationship with me. So it I scare myself away from making those attachments, away from making those relationships. It also doesn't help that in some of the relationships that I already have, just with my friends and my family, I can show some pretty abusive tendencies if I don't catch myself, which is very, very scary. And it's not that I haven't somewhat steered away from that. I have. I have gotten way better than I was 2 years ago, but still, it's it's a scary thought and not really one I want to keep ruminating on. But that's the point of this video. So that's that's what I'm doing. For the most part, the way I cope and the reason I cope just comes from pure anxiety. Either because I feel like I'm destined to become an abuser like my dad, or or because or because I'm scared of losing these attachments when the time inevitably comes for them to be lost. And it scares the hell out of me. So I hide from it. I hide from the consequences of. Actually, it's not even really consequences. I hide from just. I hide from the whole thing. I. Yeah, I hide away. I hide myself away from everyone and everything. And I sort of disconnect. It's miserable, but in my mind, when I do end up doing it, I see it as worth it. All the misery is worth it because at the very least, that fear isn't coming to fruition. So that's the point of the coping. That's how I cope. It's it's not really great. If I had to put it anyway, it's really, honestly, legitimately saying it, it's incredibly sad, and it yeah, it's certainly stirring up some thoughts in me. It's it's coping out of a pure necessity to not feel fear. It's like, it's just, instincts, right? You're not supposed to feel fear, and when you do, you cower away, you run away. And if you can't run away, you get mad and you start fucking hitting things. And yeah, that's exactly what it was. I was in a loop, and I have a feeling I'm still somewhat capable of falling back into that loop. So I'm doing this. I'm trying to figure out my fears, understand where they're coming from, and where I stand with them. And if I should accept them, maybe a little more, or try to liberate myself from them. Where does the fear stem from? Again, I feel like I covered that already. It just kind of naturally came out, but yeah, for the most part, it's loss, right? Two of the points on that list are just loss. I'm afraid of losing it. If I have something good, I don't want to lose it, which in turn can make me do rash things, which stems up another one of the my mind's going blank already. It's the you know tackling what I believe to be very heavy stuff. It's kind of hard to keep things on track. Luckily, I have these, so it loss feeds into other stems. A fear of loss may make me do something rash, something bad, and from there, I, it feeds into another sort of uh, origin, I guess, another cause, maybe is a better way to put it. Um, and it just kind of keeps repeating itself. It's a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy. And at some point, it's just, why don't I cut myself off from the world? Right? Loss is certainly the most prevalent. Um, and then, naturally, the fear of myself, fear of sort of my instincts, I guess, what I've known is also another very big major deciding factor in it. So those are the two biggest ones, I think. And then the next one is just something I've had, which is just irrational anxiety. It's not really a fear necessarily, but every time I go into really a lot of things, there's a bit of anxiety to it. Mostly just new things. If it's something I've already experienced, it shouldn't be too bad. Which is exactly why, you know, going up and talking to people and making the attachments that I need is scary. Because it's a new thing every single time. People aren't the exact same, no matter how much you like to believe they are. So, I get I get scared. I get scared of making attachments. They all just kind of intertwine together to make this terrifying bouquet. Yeah, that's how. Yeah, I think this is a good way of putting it. And it just kind of starts to cripple me. It's all it's coming from so many more places than I thought it was, which I think can be said for quite a few of the fears that I present in that I'm going to present and have presented. It's never simply just one thing. It's always a multitude of things that kind of bundle together and turn into a sort of sturdy wall on the path that I have to take. So, yeah, that's it. Just it always seems to be more than one thing, which can be a little overwhelming. If it was just one thing, it may be easier to climb or even just sort of bypass, but it almost never is. And then the last question, how can I confront it? And this is going to start becoming a trend with some of the ones that I bring up as I'm a little more, as I, ugh, as I experience more fears that I didn't necessarily know that I had. It's more than likely going to come up that I just don't have a solution to confronting them. And, well, that's what I have here. I don't know how to get better at this. I'm not entirely sure. Most of it is vague conjecture that could be true, but really just probably isn't. It may just require more, it may just require a little bit of research, which is actually a pretty fair thing. I did say I wanted to do a lot more research, and I honestly should start doing more. Um, but, you know, at the end of the day, it has to come from my own mind. I can read on plenty of things, but if I don't come to the revelation myself, it's probably not going to be effective. It's not going to work. Um, so I'm going to try and rattle off a couple of the ideas that I may have had at the time and have now for sort of solutions on how I could confront this fear and maybe just work around it or sort of get rid of some of the places that it actually stems from. You know, attack the roots and hopefully get one of the trees in my path that forms this massive wall to come crashing down and boom, I can keep moving. Um, One of them is obviously exposure therapy. It's a pretty easy one, easy conclusion to come to. Exposure therapy works in a lot of different ways. I'm not entirely sure it would work in this scenario since the exposure is what scares me so much. But on the contrary, it could actually be incredibly useful. Um, another one is another one would happen to be, and this is more of a spitball idea, since honestly I only really have these two. It's coming to a sort of acceptance that I'm going to lose things, and not just in a sense like saying it out loud, but like truly understanding and believing it. Obviously, a fundamental building block of this fear is time, right? You only have limited amounts of time with everything on this planet. So, um, ugh. So naturally, when you lose those attachments, it can be very scary because what if you wanted to have more time with them? What if you feel like you didn't get enough time with them? And it comes down to a lot of sort of, I guess, existential understanding, just a sort of a, a sort of self-discovery, which can actually be it can actually be incredibly effective. I know that it's worked with other portions of my life before. It worked when I was having depression, and there is a chance that simply through a little bit of self discovery, I can understand and maybe even begin to shed this fear away or not fear it anymore in general, just sort of grow past it. There is a very good chance of that. The only issue is it's pretty hard to accelerate self-discovery because it just kind of happens naturally. Even if you try to explore yourself, it's not necessarily something that you can fully do yourself. Uh, but it just comes from experiencing things, from being around, from talking, from just existing. It doesn't. It's not something that I can do, and that feels very unsatisfying in terms of ways of confronting it. But I guess maybe the biggest issue with that question for this would be that maybe the solutions don't need to feel satisfying. Maybe they just need to work, need to function. And I don't think up until exactly now I fully realized that. So hopefully this will expand the horizons for which I can answer that question, as well as in general sort of approach how I handle my fears, how I see my fears. It's it's a tough little realization to come to, that maybe they're not really fears, and instead they're just sort of hiccups in just your own understanding of yourself. So yeah, I'm that might be something to talk about later. That might be something to go on about in a different video, either a weekly checkup or one of these. It's something I'll have to give a lot more thought into. But anywho, I think I've waffled on for long enough. I've I've rambled a little bit, got off track quite a few times, but I feel like I got my point across, and I did it more succinctly than the previous episodes. So, in that case, I shall see myself next time.